The problem being the average person doesn't actually use it as such. Again, it's a tool. It's how it's used, not just who. Being neurodivergent with cognitive style subconscious primacy mode, which means my brain prioritizes subliminal learning rather than neurotypical, means having a hard time explaining how you know something, since I can't just recite long strings of sentences live and why I use Obsidian to see relational data to learn. This again comes from something that reviews this again comes from something that reviews old Star Trek episodes instead of studying about the things he generalizes, and thus undermines actual accessibility since everything is opinion based but asserts that he's right through the whole thing. If you aren't studying disabilities and how they can affect people, you can't possibly know what counts as utility and assistance. Just because you do little to no work and assertions for money via volume doesn't mean you actually care about accessibility. So what I'm gonna do here is I have timestamps here. When I click them, it'll go to the video here, and I have responses for their direct quotes, so you can see that I'm not misrepresenting them, which is more than anyone will ever do for me because they're lazy. They can just do everything in like an hour. They just set on the record and they just start speaking their opinions. All right, all right. School's in session. Facts, not outdated beliefs. The defense of normalcy becomes a moral shield for inaction. It gatekeeps accessibility, justice, and diversity, assuming the non-disabled, neurotypical, and normatively able-bodied as the default human. This system denies tools and accommodations, upholds ableism, and renders the non-average invisible or problematic, all while claiming neutrality. Thus, labeling somehow disabled people as a part of the problem when the part of the problem is everyone else, the people that aren't disabled, and then someone that knows nothing about disability, anything like that, isn't disabled themselves, is saying what disabled people do and don't need when they know nothing about neurodivergence or anything like dyscalculia, for instance. Let's get on with it. So after I read my script here that I've compiled, I will go over the evidence step by step. I have quite a bit here. And so yeah, let's tackle this full on irrefutably. Many conversations about AI and art seem to skip over one crucial reality. Not everyone comes to this conversation from the same place of privilege, ability, or access. What I see again and again is people debating AI in art as if it's a toy, a trend, or a threat to their income. They don't stop to ask who has never been allowed to participate in art until now. Who needed tools like AI just to bridge the gap and that privilege kept wide open? And why does this make them so uncomfortable? For people like me, living with executive dysfunction, dyscalculia, CPTSD, and other disabilities, AI is the first time I've been able to do things I couldn't before. It's not replacing my creativity, it's giving me a way to access it in a world that built systems for people unlike me. Yet for these same tools are framed as cheating when used by those who were never given a fair shot. This is a pattern disabled people know all too well. When tools make life easier for everyone else, they're celebrated. When they level the playing field for us, they're called unethical. What this debate keeps missing: AI is not the villain. The misuse of AI, or the refusal to let marginalized people use it, is the real harm. This isn't about art being real or fake, it's about who gets to create, who decides what tools are valid, and why access is so often policed by those who never needed it. I'm not here to convince people to like AI art. I'm here to show that AI art is a doorway for people like me to finally participate in spaces where we were always told we didn't belong. When we say AI is stealing, we ignore that people have always used tools to create. Ethics depends on how the tool is used, not the tool itself. Those who can't create art the traditional way have every right to find new ways to tell their stories. It's easy to gatekeep from a place of comfort. It's harder to ask, Who gets left out of these arbitrary rules? Whose voice is silenced when we decide what counts as real art? That's the question this entire project is about. To learn more about HyperSanity, living off beliefs rather than empirical reality, check out my site that has almost everything one needs to advocate for the dis/differently abled, empirical morality, how to weigh words versus actions, how to spot logical fallacies like the one Steve falls to, and more. Preface. Beliefs do not automatically equate to morality. Just because someone believes something doesn't mean it's morally right or true. Ethical frameworks help evaluate and guide moral beliefs by providing a more objective and reasoned approach to determining what is right or wrong. These frameworks can include principles such as justice, fairness, and the greater good, which help to assess and refine individual and collective moral beliefs. In summary, while morality can be influenced by personal beliefs, it is often defined and evaluated through ethical frameworks that provide a more structured and reasoned basis for moral decision making. No ethics equals no morality. Let's clarify the relationship between beliefs, morality, and ethical frameworks. Beliefs. Definition. Personal convictions about what is true or right. Characteristics. Subjective, based on individual experiences, cultural background, and personal values. Role in morality. Beliefs can influence moral judgment, but they are not the same as morality. Beliefs can be misguided or incorrect. Morality, the principles and values that guide behavior and determine what is right and wrong. Characteristics can be influenced by personal beliefs, cultural norms, and societal values, all which can have their own fallacies. Role and behavior. Morality produces a basis for making decisions and guiding actions, but it can be more structured and reasoned when informed by ethical frameworks. Ethical frameworks. Structured and systematic approaches to understanding and evaluating moral behavior. Characteristics provide principles and guidelines for making moral decisions, often based on universal values such as justice, fairness, and the greater good. Ethical frameworks help to assess and refine moral beliefs, providing a more objective and reasoned basis for moral decision making. Personal morality without ethical frameworks. Individuals can have a sense of right and wrong based on their personal beliefs, experiences, and culture background. This personal morality can guide their behavior. Limitations. Personal morality without an ethical framework can be more subjective and may lack structured reasoning and universal principles that ethical frameworks provide. A person might believe that lying is always wrong because of their personal experiences and cultural background, even without a formal ethical framework. This belief guides their behavior, but it may not be universally applicable or reasoned. Frameworks and morality. Ethical frameworks enhance personal morality by providing a more structured and reasoned approach to evaluating moral beliefs and actions. Ethical frameworks help to assess and refine moral beliefs, making them more objective and universally applicable. Utilitarianism, a common ethical framework, evaluates actions based on their consequences and the greatest good for the greatest number. This framework can help refine and justify personal moral beliefs about lying, for instance. Simply, beliefs are personal convictions that can influence but are not the same as morality. Morality can exist without formal ethical frameworks, but is often more subjective and less structured. Ethical frameworks provide a structured and reasoned approach to understanding and evaluating moral behavior, enhancing and refining personal morality. In essence, while personal beliefs can guide behavior, they do not constitute a fully developed moral system about the structure and reasoning provided by ethical frameworks. Ethical frameworks help to ensure that moral beliefs are more grounded, objective, and universally applicable. Hence my ethical scaffold, aka HyperSanity, which uses empirical facts and accounts for outliers like the disabled. AI, Art, and Ethics. Steve Shive's intro. 1 minute and 18 seconds. I want to make clear that this is a problem with the art or this is a problem with the art of the content, not the ethical problems that surround it, then immediately these models have been trained on the art created by real human artists without permission and are generating revenue. Morality is determined by an ethical framework, otherwise it's just personal feelings and beliefs. Steve claims the video isn't about ethics, but the very next sentence is entirely about ethical issues. Consent, compensation, attribution, fair use. These are ethical categories. You cannot bring them up without using an ethical lens. This is a self-refuting statement. He invokes ethics to argue he isn't talking about ethics.
Not with the broader implications of it, and not with the ethical problems that surround it, all of which are completely valid. Like the idea that these models have been trained on the art created by real human artists who did not give their permission for their work to be used.
But it's not reproducing their art. That's the difference. There's actually copyright policies in place to prevent actual theft from happening. Training doesn't mean it can give you the verbatim output. It's no different than going to the library. Anyways,
in this way and are not being compensated for their work being used this way, in a way that is actually generating revenue and value for the company that is hosting the AI model, and the original artists whose work allowed the AI model.
Okay, here we go. Response. But you go on to use ethics. Morality is defined under an ethical framework. Opinions are not a basis for judgment when the disabled are being ideologically gatekept. It's not stealing because it can't actually generate original content that's from training. It now pulls data from the internet, so it might know snippets from platforms like Reddit, who signed a deal, or publicly made transcripts, but it can't just write the original. It's referencing the same way you read something at the library. It's not, and not every disabled person has access to libraries. Mine is public domain, like wikis, old books, etc. It's gatekeeping versus the disabled, as you're labeled a thief for being disabled despite it referencing your own content, etc. Because most don't study ethics and never consider outliers, so we're lumped into the same group. They, Americans, are blaming people for corporations and blaming the wrong people. Just using AI isn't stealing. If you believe so, then you're ideologically against libraries and are a firm believer in economic and disability divides. Sources: U.S. Copyright Office. AI generated content not inherently copyrightable unless human authorship exists. 2023. Art is created by real human artists. This framing implies AI art is not real art. AI users are not real artists. This is ontological gatekeeping. Art equals expression of thought through form. It is, if the form exists and it moves people, it's art, regardless of the tool. To deny that is to deny the disabled, the technologically assisted, and the non-traditional. Moral absolutism, ethical collapse. By claiming artists didn't give consent, so AI is wrong, he suggests all training is unethical unless explicitly opt-in. But this collapses because human learning is not opt-in. We all absorb from others without permission. Ethical use does not equals training. Ethical training use is the true vector of harm or respect, cause and effect. If his argument were applied consistently, you'd have to ban books, outlaw inspiration, require licensing to learn from YouTube. He never defines ethics, but weaponizes it. He never states what ethical framework he's using. Kantian, utilitarian, social contract establishes whether this harm is to property, person, or principle. Engages with any opposing models, e.g., disability ethics, access first ethics, transformative use. That makes the rhetoric hollow. You can't say this is wrong without answering wrong by what logic, wrong to who and why. Otherwise, it's just bias and not ethics. I do ask, is this just? Is this ableist? Does it harm the vulnerable? Does it elevate those previously excluded? I use disability ethics, empirical reasoning, and ontological grounding. That makes my position grounded. His is performance, mine is logic.
For the company that is hosting the AI model, the original artists whose work allowed the AI model to do what it does are not seeing any direct financial benefit from
AI literally doesn't work without a ton of training. We'd literally never get there otherwise. The problem is that people aren't sharing their work and prompts, so AI is now training on itself with no growth. Hence my my version on Russell's paradox, my own paradox that I created that creates growth and doesn't collapse like Russell's paradox and others. It actually creates growth. It creates ethical, moral growth, which is effect from 60% of content online being generated from AI, not assisted, referencing original empirical standards. Google search results as of January 2025. Approximately 19.1% of content in Google search results is AI generated. Overall online content, an AWS study found that 57% of online content is either AI generated or translated using AI algorithms. AI start to 130, which we just finished. AI isn't stealing, but people are. I have dyscalculia, dyslexia, ADHD, CPTSD, BPD, general neurodivergences. I'm not privileged with being able to skate through life without assistance. I have executive disorder. It's borderline impossible to sit down and record a video. Of course, I'm going to use my private AI to help me with my ideas. That's trained to be actually DEI and operates on ethics and empiricism. Nor does that mean I use AI for everything, hence this video. AI is the first equalizer I've ever had. It helps me get past mental roadblocks from executive dysfunction, able to work past fibromyalgia, brain fog, and in so much physical pain that it's hard to concentrate. It can tell me what areas I need to work on to fill in knowledge gaps. It can cite studies to correct me, and my AI isn't biased. You disagreeing doesn't change reality. Therefore, I'm not getting bias from my AI. I ask it to fact check me all the time, then look at references. Humans make more mistakes than my AI. Humans are 80% bias, aka beliefs. AI operates on how you train it. If AI is theft, then the libraries are piracy and calculators are crime. AI didn't steal your job wasn't accessible. Instead of using AI ethically, people are directly stealing from my personal experiences and ideas. Mascot agency dev and other Bored Ape fascists. Logical fallacies behind AI is theft. Appeal to emotion, which is a fallacy. AI hurts artists. No. Corporations using AI unethically hurts artists. The tool itself isn't the thief. The user determines ethics. If you use AI ethically, then it's ethical. It's actually that simple. It's a tool. Anyone can misuse anything. And saying that those with barriers you don't need it only serves to take rights away from us because you aren't disabled and know nothing about our struggles. Would you blame Photoshop for a forged signature? Would you outlaw pins? It's a false equivalence. AI learning from artists equals stealing. AI learning like you studying your favorite art book. AI is a tool. Artists steal more from each other than AI ever has. No artist exists in isolation. Inspiration doesn't equals theft. All AI is unethical. That's like saying all books are propaganda. AI is used for accessibility, education, empathy training, and neurodivergent translation. If it only feels like theft when we use it, then you weren't upset about the theft. You were upset about equality over those you never consider. The real stealing. Plagiarism is human, not machine. AI doesn't publish books, people do. Theft equals intentional misrepresentation versus the differently abled. Tools that can be abused are not inherently abusive. AI can't plagiarize, only people can. Corporations scrape data without permission. Disabled creators use AI to reclaim a voice. When I use AI, I'm not stealing. I'm taking back what systems denied me: expression, clarity, equality. Ableism and the anti-AI movement. Neurotypicals use AI too, but call us cheaters. Average users use spell check, templates, grammar checkers, reminders, yet say when you use it, it's cheating. That's ableism. That's gatekeeping. The irony. AI helps me write what I can't say out loud. It explains math to my dyscalculia brain. It helps me structure thoughts when I can't finish a sentence. And yet, suddenly, it's unethical when I finally get heard. That's not ethics, that's elitism. Empirical data and historical parallels. Typewriters were called cheating, calculators were banned in schools, audiobooks were for lazy readers. Every accessibility tool was called cheating until enough able people use it. Historical parallels. Braille was mocked, screen readers were too expensive to support, closed captions were optional. AI is the next accessibility tech, and just like before, it's the disabled who suffer when gatekeepers scream. Define the real ethics. Ethical AI, used with attribution when needed, not sold as original without transformation, used for neurodivergent communication, executive dysfunction scaffolding, assistive learning, and translation. Unethical AI, plagiarized content sold as original, zero transformation or contribution, used to mimic disabled voices for profit, peasantries, Nazi mascot agencies. But again, these are human actions, not machine choices. AI art, the equality you fear. Training doesn't equal theft, the empirical distinction. Fact, no generative AI model can reproduce the original file, layer, or canvas from which it trained. This is verifiable, testable, and mathematically constrained by current model architectures. AI learning from art is no more theft than you looking at a sunset and painting it. The input vanishes. The output is transformation, not duplication. In copyright law, transformative use is not theft. If it does not reproduce exact content, it is not infringement. If training on art is theft, then every artist who's ever studied anatomy or perspective books is a criminal. Logical collapse. But it's their style. Style is not copyrightable, period. It's not protected by IP in any country. Your brain imitates styles every time you learn. Imitation is how humans learn. So unless we ban all teaching, this argument is dead. But people use AI to copy my art. Then target the people, not the tool. That's like blaming a printer for fake IDs. Disability access and the hidden privilege of traditional art. Not everyone can physically or mentally create art. Let's break this down. People with no hands, chronic fatigue, tremors, vision impairment, or executive dysfunction may be locked out of art unless they use AI. People with CPTSD, severe trauma, or fibromyalgia brain fog often cannot sit for 6 hours a day doing line work or rendering. People with zero free time, e.g., unpaid caretakers, survivors, minimum wage workers, cannot afford a 10-year grind just to be deemed legitimate. Saying just learn to draw is ableist. Saying everyone can make art is denial of lived experience. You haven't been disabled, you don't know what disabled is, so how can you possibly say that everyone can make art? Empirical accessibility gaps, AI bridges. Color vision aid for colorblind artists, prompt to visualizer for aphantasia or cognitive processing disorders where you can't imagine pictures in your head, scene composition for those who think in stories but not images, image-based learning for dyslexic who can't parse traditional tutorials. AI doesn't replace creativity, it translates it into a usable form. Refusing AI is discriminating against the disabled. When you argue against AI art, you are arguing that disabled people should never express themselves visually. arguing that access to visual arts should be gatekept by physical ability, free time, and neurotypical learning styles, implying that equality is only valid if it looks like your struggle. Moral absolutism equals fascism. Anyone who uses AI is cheating. That is moral absolutism, the root of every system used to suppress minorities, punish divergence, and silence the weak. The idea that only traditional is moral mirrors every puritanical structure ever used to dominate. Religious purity codes, academic elitism.
The world's most moral podcast.
That's right. I want y'all to do I don't want you to do a forensic audit of them. I just want you to do a cursory audit. Have you ever organized anything as if they were handed on two stones like Moses coming down from the mountain? Now they on Instagram, now they on TikTok, now they on Twitter, they on fan base, they on Snapchat, they on Flickr, they on Tumblr, they on Facebook, they on Spills, Spoutable, Clubhouse, they all over the place. And a lot of us are falling for those false prophets. See, this is the stupidity that we're seeing take place across our community. These people don't believe in organizing. These people don't believe in mobilizing. All they believe in is tearing down somebody who is doing something.
Eugenic discrimination, art gatekeeping. When survival requires assistance, calling the assistance evil is a form of violence. Just like what J.P. Morgan did to Nikola Tesla. The direct parallel. AI art allows a burn victim to illustrate their memory, a dyslexic person to draft a graphic novel, a wheelchair-bound artist with hand tremors to direct a style, someone with no formal training but brilliant taste to create emotion-driven images. You want AI banned because you don't want to share the gallery with people you used to exclude. AI art isn't a threat, it's a door you've always guarded. Art was never yours to gatekeep. You can't scream about ethics while denying access to the very people who have been silenced by your definition of legitimacy. AI art isn't real art. The ontological collapse. It's not real because a human didn't make it. Let's stop here. Empirical truth, AI art exists. You can see it, print it, frame it, react to it, and be emotionally moved by it. If it exists in observable form, then it is real by every empirical standard. Real doesn't equals human or originated, real equals observable. This isn't just a flawed opinion, it's an ontological error. Denying that AI art is real is the same as claiming photographs aren't real because they weren't painted by hand. AI generated art is not fake, it's unauthorized by your ego. You used a tool I don't like doesn't equals ethical argument. Saying you used AI so your art doesn't count it is not an ethical claim, it's aesthetic gatekeeping dressed as in moral vocabulary. You don't outlaw brushes because Hitler painted. You don't ban oil paints because George Bush used them. Art is not judged by the tool used, but by the intent, the transformation, and the impact. Otherwise, every digital artist using Photoshop is fake. Otherwise, 3D artists using Blender aren't real creators. Otherwise, disabled artists using adaptive text aren't real, which is pure ableist erasure. Ethical claims require understanding ethics. To call someone's use of AI unethical, you must understand intent, evaluate harm, consider context, apply a consistent ethical framework. Saying all AI art is unethical without any of this is just bias. It's not ethics, it's performance. Bias doesn't equals truth. It's fake because I don't like it. That's not an argument. That's emotional absolutism. It collapses under scrutiny. Your dislike does not erase existence. Your discomfort does not define reality. Your fear of inclusion does not constitute moral law. When you say AI art isn't real, what you mean is it's not under my control and that makes me feel small. AI art as democratic expression. AI art allows the voiceless to speak, the untrained to explore, the disabled to express, the unheard to be seen. You don't have to like AI art, but pretending it doesn't count is just you failing a logic test. You either believe art is for everyone, or you believe it's for a select few gatekeepers with enough time, money, health, and neurotypical function to pass your purity tests. Final word. AI art is real, your gatekeeping isn't. You want to decide what counts as real, but you never studied what reality even is. Art created by AI exists. It moves people, it expresses ideas, it transforms source into something new. That makes it art by every historical, empirical, and humanistic standard. And your refusal to accept that, that's not critique, that's fear in disguise. Burn the lie, not the tool. They're not scared AI is unethical, they're scared AI makes us equal. AI is not the problem. People who exclude disabled creators are. If you're only mad at AI when it gives a disabled person a fighting chance, sometimes discomfort isn't about fairness. It's about losing the control you never realized you had. Okay, on with the rest of the portion of the video via transcript.
In human history, when you can have art that is not the product of a human imagination. Because a large language model is not a conscious being.
It kind of technically is, because what makes a human are their memories and their ability to express their memories with emotions and provide depth using like things like philosophy, poetry, all things that an AI can do. And AI is dependent on its training, right? You can train its personality based on human conversations. This has been empirically proven. Before AI was released to the public, there's been robots that were cloned off of, hundreds of thousands of conversations from one person to their partner, and it can replicate everything that they would say. So consciousness isn't biological, if that's what you're stating. But the person using it is, and the ideas come from them. A hammer isn't conscious and people build using it. It's a logical fallacy. AI art doesn't mean anything. That's not an argument. That's your opinion. And it's one rooted in ableism and philosophical ignorance. I have proven otherwise. Bias just controls everyone's view. Without an understanding of philosophy, art is meaningless, which is why I make my art based on my philosophies, and they are different.
Model is not a conscious being. An AI image generator is not a conscious being.
Yes, it is. If you train it using thousands of your own work, your own poetry, philosophy, and you literally manage its memory, and I'm not divulging how I've done this yet. Yes, it's drawing from memory. Feeling is one mode of expression, not a requirement. Even those with flattened affect produce real, impactful art.
That prescribes how it responds to that prompt. So the art it creates is completely lifeless. And here's where we get to the big divide between the people who are defenders of.
Okay, response. Exactly. So if you train it off deeply personal information, teach it empirical ethics, philosophy, and put in your own poetry and have it reference that, it's unique. Feeling is just a neurochemical process which can be emulated. Even fish are sentient. Yes, fish have emotion and feel pain.
Even if we judge the art itself to be poor, to be bad, to not work for us, for whatever reason, it still tells us something about the artist or about life, about the human experience. It means something. And AI art doesn't.
That's just, again, your opinion. Yes, it does. It depends on the person and the outcome, what was put into that prompt. Some of us don't just put in a simple word prompt. And that's the difference. They're not referencing their own data, actual, a year's worth of data that they've been putting together in Obsidian, and other data that's mine that's not in Obsidian. And so it has my bio. It knows what I've been through. It can recognize my struggles, my suffering, my pain that my mom and I have gone through for 30 years with the abuse. It knows philosophical depth. It knows emotion. It knows compassion. My AI is more compassionate than someone like this. My AI promotes veganism. This person doesn't give a fuck about climate change. Otherwise, they'd be vegan. That's not for you to arbitrarily decide based off nothing but your bias. To a disabled person, it's the difference between being able to visualize complex things like neurodivergence and executive dysfunction, because words alone don't do a disabled person justice.
Something. And AI art doesn't. Something. And AI art doesn't. AI art doesn't mean anything. And there are some people, like me, who believe that art should mean something. It should have some meaning. It should have some reference to human.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, just because you don't see the prompts people are using doesn't mean that there aren't people that put real emotion, real stories that they haven't told anyone else, but they feel comfortable telling their AI, right? As long as you're on it, if you're using GPT, make sure you're using a team plan. Otherwise, they're trading off your personal data, and that's getting leaked everywhere. So use a team membership if you're going to be training it off of personal data in whatever way you decide, non-API wise, etc. You mean most everything I create? If it's trained off my life and my work, then it's just an extension of me. It just has super intelligence and memory capacity that makes up for my cognitive style, which is subconscious primacy mode, which I've done a video about. And if you actually want to learn about disabilities and what suffering is and equality, for the disabled, then check that video out. It's a pretty short video.
It's as deep as it goes. There are those people, and then there are people who are a step beyond them, who are positively opposed, it seems, to art having any meaning whatsoever.
This would be like the 4chans, the Discordians. I've already proven the Discordians, they use AI for evil. Like, they intentionally use AI for evil. Like, they generate like graphic, violent fucking shit on GPT. It's disgusting. And they circulate that shit.
They don't want it to mean anything. And they have this chip on their shoulder about these are the people that seem resentful of artists and use AI art creators.
That's because things are always gated to the disabled, and as soon as we get something, the biologically privileged want to take it away because they call it cheating or lazy or say that anyone can learn art, when that's empirically untrue and not plausible. Just because one person can walk doesn't mean others can neurologically. Just because most don't need calculators doesn't mean that others don't.
It's as deep as it goes. There are those people, and then there are people who are a step beyond them, who are positively opposed, it seems, to art having any meaning whatsoever. They don't want it to mean anything.
So that's 70. Okay. You don't think that those who are disabled are rightfully angry that people like you constantly warp ethics and logic that instantly collapses under recursion, because there's no logical ethical reason anyone can name that can't be disproven. If someone came for your wheelchair or other assistive device and were denied healthcare, which you need to get meds that you can't do art without, you would rightfully have a chip on your shoulder. It's not for the privileged average who know nothing about ethics and don't even state what framework they are using to make these biased opinion-based statements on morality. AI won't replace artists. The only thing stopping artists is the illogical choice to not train their own AI based off their work and philosophies to get new ideas, generate concepts based on an outline. If they truly are artists, it won't matter the tools they use according to you. The choice of tool is the main component. They could make money faster. They choose not to, because then they wouldn't be able to claim superiority over the disabled who they despise for now having a voice. 8 minutes.
Creators as almost a weapon to strike at artists out of some kind of weird, warped jealousy. You see people posting images they created through AI on social media, and they say, oh, it's over for artists. Hollywood is done. They post these weird, like 5-second AI-generated video clips, and they say, Hollywood is so done. Or they say, filmmakers are so done. Or comic book artists are so done. Like, as though they're reveling in the idea that this AI program, this machine, is going to replace, is not just going to be a different kind of art, but is going to replace the human artists. And there's a certain subset of boosters of AI art who seem to revel in this, who positively want this. They don't want art created by people. They just want art created by a machine according to their specifications. And that's all they need, and that's all they want. And they are hostile to the other kind of art. And the shame of it is, if we are ever able to resolve...
We can. It's called ethics, actual ethics. Morality is dictated by ethics. Otherwise, as you're doing, and as I've been proving, factually, undeniably, you're basing everything off of biased beliefs, right? Outdated opinions and talking points from other talking heads. But now I agree with this. The distinction he can't make is that only the average populace are the ones using AI unethically. AI is only ethical if it's used ethically, if you train it to be ethical using empirical foundations. Most of his video is a compilation of illogical fallacies and no understanding of ethics, thereby morality. Hostile, you mean like the people who now, for the first time in human history, have abilities denied to them via lack of biological and other privileges that can now do things that they only dreamed about. Because people don't believe in libraries or education for all, not just your privileged privilege blindness. Your voice isn't on the line. Your ability to do things you can't do to disabilities is not being fought against by people that purity test with no logical points and not actually grounded in ethics, but just their belief system. This is an epistemically unsound position that mirrors ableist gatekeeping, whether intentional or not. 915.
To resolve the ethical problems with AI that I referenced before,
that you said you weren't going to do, but you keep doing.
We're able to find a way around those so that we don't have to feel guilty for using AI to generate text or to generate art.
It's very easy for people like you that are financially privileged that can work any job they, physically want. They could do manual labor if they wanted to, they could be a cashier. Being a cashier is a privilege. Someone that has dyscalculia cannot be a cashier. That is a biological privilege that is never acknowledged, ever. So, I mean, you have privileges to work any traditional job you want, but you're a talking head that doesn't put in as much work as I do about actual ethics, morality, and the consequences of things and why something is moral or immoral. And anyways, you can afford to use a local LLM. You can use your computer to run, a non-GPT AI. And then you can train it off of your own documents. The problem with that is it's gate kept to the disabled, to poor people, to people that can't work a traditional job and spend $5,000 on a computer able to do that. That's why GPT is so popular. It's more accessible to poor people. It's more accessible to disabled people.
Because it's built on training data that the creators of the AI did not get permission to use and have not compensated the original artists or writers or whatever for. Like, if we can find a way to solve that problem, AI text creators, AI art generators, AI image generators, whatever, they could be a cool toy. Like, that's how I view ChatGPT. It's a really cool toy. It's fun. I've used it. It's fun to play around with. It's never occurred to me to try and use it to
So you've played around with it, but it's unethical, but you've played around with it as a toy. So you have you actually tried using it ethically? That way you could come from a place of experience and not just generalized belief because that's what everyone else believes.
replace my own writing or to wish that
you don't have to use it to replace your writing. You can use it to enhance your writing. You can use it to give new ideas to an existing book that's nearly done or something like that. You could use it to fact check. You can, most people, like the average person, like the average disabled person, the person that's using AI ethically, they're using it to assist in enhancing what they already did, right? It's no different than giving it to a proofreader. It's no different than giving it to a proofreader and them correcting you and shit like that, or a ghostwriter or something like that, right? It's no different to a disabled person. But the average person, they're just lazy.
it would be used in substitution of another human being's writing. That's absurd to me. Why would I want to read something that was written by a machine?
So just this again, it's a fallacy. It makes no logical coherence. There's no coherency at all. Like, so if I put 95% of a book and I have it generate the last, according to you, like the whole book is just disqualified. It doesn't matter what the original work that was put into it, Sure, there are people that just put in, write me a book about this. I'm not doing that. There are plenty of people not doing that too. You're just generalizing everything based on like the sum total of misappropriation and not acknowledging who is misappropriating it and then making exceptions for outliers. Because that's what ethics demands. Ethics demands acknowledging outliers, the disabled, people that are ignored and invisible, as demonstration of this video.
Instead of something that was written by a real human being. Just the same as, why would I want to watch a film that was produced by a machine rather than a film that was...
Well, there's actually millions of people that watch AI shows. There's an entire show that's AI generated that like runs 24/7 of Seinfeld, and millions of people watch that. It's probably still popular. There were like millions of people watching it, I believe, at the time. It was like a little while ago, maybe like a year or two ago. But yeah, so there are plenty of people watching AI content just because you don't want to, because maybe you haven't seen something actually interesting. So because of your experiential experiences, experiential experiences and beliefs, not actual investigation that you would find if you did a real thorough take like I'm doing.
Made from the imagination and the creativity and the passion of a human being.
And right, again, like I put so much passion into my AI. Are you fucking kidding me? Like give a disabled person GPT and they will use it passionately. This may come as a logical shock, but there's a difference between generation and assistance. If it's molded out of your own work and programmed to handle data specifically, then it's assistance. The difference being accessibility equals assistance, and assistance equals assist with, not does everything. If you knew the difference, if you did basic research in AI, you would know the difference between assistance and generation, which is what you're describing. You're describing generation, not assistance. There's a distinct difference.
Something. And AI art doesn't. AI art doesn't mean anything. And there are some people, like me, who believe that art...
Because again, the imagination comes from the human. If the AI trained off your data is just your tool, no different than a calculator, it's how it's used. There's actually an experiment that shows AI phobes. They did an experiment to see if a book written by AI but published as human would be liked. It was, until people found out. This is quintessential bias. You've proven your mind is made up and no amount of anything will likely change it. 11 minutes. Ableist gatekeeping.
You don't have to be a skilled artist now. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to have an innate talent for art. Like, you can use the AI tools.
And what's that? Having an innate talent. That's a biological privilege. Disabled people do not have that privilege. So you're gatekeeping disability.
Create art in a way that people never could before. And the thing is, art has been accessible all along.
No, it hasn't. I've just proven it's not. This is see, he doesn't bring up disabilities at all. You're mentioning just you mentioning accessibility and then not explaining any of the disorders that proved you wrong, not explaining psychology, personality disorders, tremors, like vision issues. Like, there's literally thousands of disabilities that can prevent someone from doing art. They can have the materials. That doesn't mean that they can just do it and train past biological privileges that they don't have. And you're holding them up to biological privileges you do and the quote unquote normal people do, which is just so massive othering, just so disgusting.
And I mean that in terms of creating it, not just being an audience member, not just being a viewer or an appreciator.
It's not true.
Creating art has been accessible all along, and creating certain kinds of art is more accessible now than it has ever been, having nothing to do with AI.
That is not true. Oh my God. You really don't understand disability. Not everyone can learn or perform art. You don't get to decide what means something. That's not ethics. That's bias. This is clear-cut ableism and absolutism. There are many conditions that can prevent someone from being an artist. For one, it could take someone 10 plus years to get as good as someone privileged like you, months. This is empirical reality, as you are your brain. You can't will neurochemistry and disabilities away. It's ableism because you're talking about accessibility while denying it based on people that can and not can't. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will forever spend its life believing it's stupid. I generate art based off my own philosophy that I developed. That's why my art isn't just generic. Excluding accessibility because most misuse something is beyond anti-accessibility. Disabilities that can prevent realistically learning art, executive disorders, loss of limbs. Just because one person can paint with their mouth doesn't mean everyone can or can learn to.
Something. And AI art doesn't. AI art doesn't mean anything. And there are some people, like me, who believe that art...
Well, that's on 13. Oh, I forgot to fix the timestamps. That's my bad. 13 minutes 33.
Than, the cost of your phone, but you probably have your phone anyway. You can create any kind of art you want. You can grab a pencil and a sheet of paper and draw right now, like nothing is stopping you. Now, it might not turn out the way you want it.
Oh my God, that's
I could sit down and...
That is such a pedantic, disgusting excuse.
Draw Batman right now. It's not going to look anything like it would look if Jim Aparo drew it, or Neil Adams, or Jim Lee. I don't have the skills. I can't do it.
AI can, though. So it should be justified under that reasoning, not logical reasoning, but under that reasoning.
But it would be mine. Like if I drew it myself with my hands and my eyes, it would be my...
Okay, so if someone doesn't draw it with their hands and their eyes, then they're not making art. So every disabled person can't make art.
Batman in a way that the product of an AI image creator responding to a prompt I wrote.
Right? I've made images using like a book long worth of descriptions and philosophy and stories. And for you to just label things as like a simple prompt, like that's beyond simplifying. And simplifying only serves bias and laziness.
Would never be. Like, I could write a really detailed prompt in an AI image.
But you haven't. You've only used it as a toy. So how would you know? Right? You're just speculating. You're just speculating based off nothing but assumptions. Here's the distinction. If you spent time, you could learn to be better. The disabled can't. Again, you're gatekeeping based off people that aren't disabled. There's a difference between differently abled and disabled. A distinction you're not mentioning, which is a key foundation of accessibility ethics.
How well it meets the aesthetic standards that we use to judge whether or not a piece of art is good or bad, no matter how well it measures up to any of that. It's yours, and it will be more yours and more representative of who you are and your creativity, and more representative of the human experience in general.
And again, if it's trained off your data, your ideas, your doodles, etc., it's coming from your imagination. The AI just adds ability to those without. So if a gorilla paints, that's human? So gorillas are human then? Does that mean you're gonna finally go vegan and stop being pro-acceleration like every Republican? If that's the case, then all animals are human, because humans are sentient experiences, and all experiences are the result of cause and effect. My data used to assist creating off my prompt data it's a tool. Any tool can be used for bad.
Or yours, and more representative of who you are and your creativity, and more representative of the human experience in general than anything that would be created by an AI program. And like I said, AI programs used in the right way with the ethical concerns resolved, if that would even be possible, I have no problem with.
That's ironic. That's ironic. How are you going to determine what's ethical and what isn't if you can't name a framework and you're not talking about ethics? Are you still not talking about ethics? I'm confused because you said you weren't going to get into the ethics of things. It has a ton of utility. The disabled aren't allowed to talk about it because people made up their minds. No one mentions that researchers use AI, and no one studies ethics, so therefore it's impossible to use anything ethically without an understanding of philosophy and ethics. Ethics provides morals. Philosophy provides humanity and how to relate things.
Resolved, if that would even be possible, I have no problem with that. It's a cool toy. It would be nice to have.
It's not a toy. It's not a toy for the disabled. It's a life preserver. Are you fucking kidding me? It's only a toy if you use it as a toy.
Be fun to play with, and it might even have some utility in certain ways. I'm not
utility.
like
Are
completely
you fucking kidding me? My God.
Against its very existence. But the idea that it could ever replace art, like real human generated art, that misses the point of art. Like, yes, depending on how we define the term, depending on how broadly we consider it, I suppose you could say that it is now possible to have art without an artist. But why would anyone want that? And that might be the worst of the problems with AI art. The idea that an ever-growing number of people will continue to outsource their own imagination, their own creativity, their own effort.
The imagination comes from the person using it. Like, how do you not understand that it adds intelligence to the human imagination? It just depends on the human and their imagination and how far they're willing to go to learn and how to use AI with those standards. Like, oh my god. Some utility, if it didn't have utility, it wouldn't be so popular. All it does is provide utility. The problem being the average person doesn't actually use it as such. Again, it's a tool. It's how it's used, not just who. Being neurodivergent with cognitive style subconscious primacy mode, which means my brain prioritizes subliminal learning rather than neurotypical, means having a hard time explaining how you know something, since I can't just recite long strings of sentences live and why I use Obsidian to see relational data to learn. This again comes from something that reviews old Star Trek episodes instead of studying about the things he generalizes, and thus undermines actual accessibility since everything is opinion based but asserts that he's right through the whole thing. If you aren't studying disabilities and how they can affect people, you can't possibly know what counts as utility and assistance. Just because you do little to no work and assertions for money via volume doesn't mean you actually care about accessibility. It logically comes off as you milking the same arguments that aren't sound logically or empirically, but just tweaking them a tiny bit while still gatekeeping. All I do is write. All I do is write. Then I share it with my custom GPT and store it in its external memory to reference. Thus, whatever is generated literally and philosophically is me. It's an extension of myself, like a Neuralink, because I've spent over a year building my own GPT without a newer PC, API, or anything else an average person takes for granted.
At all anymore. They just won't create art for themselves at all anymore, and they will lose whatever appreciation they may have had for art that is created by people. And sure, it might be cool, might be neat, might be fun to be able to take a photograph of yourself and your buddies and run it through a sophisticated filter and make it look like you're all characters in a Miyazaki film. Like, I do understand the appeal of it. But in order to do that, you're giving away a tiny little bit of your life. And you're getting in return something that means nothing.
What's a bad trade is talking about something with no studying or effort put into it when it's literally arguing against accessibility based on nothing real or empirical.